15 years after the death of Ellen Greenberg, her family may have reason for hope as a federal investigation has been opened into the way various Philadelphia agencies handled her death. Plus, Erica Kirk, the widow of Turning Point founder Charlie Kirk, says enough is enough, arguing that her rights as a victim demand that the trial of her husband's assassin quit stalling and get underway. And deliberations begin in the highly emotional trial of a police officer who prosecutors claim failed to act during the horrific school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, that claimed the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers. All this and more tonight on Courtroom Confidential. Good evening and welcome, everyone. It is Wednesday, January 21st, 2026, and this is Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I see Cody in Tennessee, Afton, Susan D, Kathy Mama Bear, Therapist You Know, OnlyFan OF. You guys are fantastic. I appreciate you always carving out some time on a Wednesday evening to be with us, and this is a good one. You're going to really enjoy being here because I have a very special guest that I'm very excited to chat with, and we've got a lot of cases that are in the news this week and a lot of cases that we've been following very closely for a long time. So I'm glad that you all could make it. Hello to everyone who's watching on X, and if you're watching on Facebook, please say hello in the chat. We would love to hear from you. And if you're new, thank you. Thank you for showing up. I think you're really going to enjoy it. As I said, we've got a great guest and we've got a lot of cases to chat about. But let me introduce myself. My name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former prosecutor with the LA District Attorney's Office. I was there for just over 10 years before I left to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. And this is Courtroom Confidential, where we try to present to you both sides of the courtroom. And this is our show that we call Wednesday Night Live. It is a midweek check-in on all things true crime. So, like I said, tonight we're going to be discussing the developments in the Ellen Greenberg case, a case that I know a lot of you are very passionate about. Plus, we're going to be talking about a new motion filed by Erica Kirk. She is the widow of Charlie Kirk in the Tyler Robinson case. And then right now, a jury is deliberating for Adrian Gonzales in the Uvalde case. So we'll be getting into all of that. As always, please stay to the end for announcements. But take a deep breath. You've made it. You're halfway through the week. Therapist You Know, thank you so much for gifting the Courtroom Confidential membership and kicking us off this evening. Cody in Tennessee, same to you. Thank you for the membership gift. And to Living Loving Galveston, thank you for becoming a member. Welcome aboard. You made it. It's hump day. You've made it halfway through the week. You're doing fine. Take a deep breath. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you have not already, and share this with anybody that you think might enjoy it. But let me introduce my guest. He is a Fox News contributor, a law enforcement specialist, the founder of opsdesk.org, and a co-host along with myself on the weekly rap sheet on Fox Nation. Everybody, please welcome Paul Mauro. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Are you staying warm?
Yeah, because I'm not leaving the house. It's freezing here, and we're about to get hit with a blizzard, all right? And I don't want to hear anything out of you from L.A.
Well, I was supposed to come out there and be with you this Sunday. They were going to fly me out, and they canceled on me because they said it's going to be absolute chaos.
Stick to that story. Okay, yeah. I'll hold down the fort myself. Thanks for nothing.
You're supposed to get like several inches of snow this weekend, right?
Yeah, we are. So what? You know, we haven't really had a lot of snow. Everybody the whole place is melting down. Oh my God, it's going to be a blizzard tree. When I was a kid, it used to snow here. You know, it's not like the old days. So a little bit of snow, everybody loses their mind. It's actually kind of nice. I like
it. Good. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to join us tonight because these are 3 cases that you and I have actually chatted about quite a bit, plus a new one. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And I know one case in particular, you actually have spoken to a representative for the family. And I'm talking about the Ellen Greenberg case, just to catch everybody up. I know a lot of you have been following this very, very closely, but this is the case of Ellen Greenberg. She's 27 years old. She was a teacher. This is out of Philadelphia, or the outskirts of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her fiance at the time was a man by the name of Samuel Goldberg. She, on January 26th of 2011, 15 years ago, it's going to be 15 years ago in about 5 days here, out of Manayunk, Pennsylvania, she is found inside her apartment with 20 plus stab wounds, including 10 stab wounds to the back of her head. We've all seen this graphic. And lo and behold, the medical examiner, after some back and forth, by the way, that we'll get into, declares this a case of taking her own life, which is just shocking to everyone who even gets a cursory glimpse into the facts of this case. It's had a long and tortured history, gone back and forth. But the most recent, actually not the most recent, the second to most recent development was that a supposedly independent medical examiner, Dr. Lindsay Simon, was tasked after a lawsuit from the family with trying to determine if this was a case of her taking her own life or a case of homicide or just asking for them to reopen. And she said that it's a case best classified as someone who took their own life, which shocked a lot of people. Anyhow, the latest development, which is what I want to ask you about, Paul, is that the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania just recently submitted subpoenas. And they're doing an inquiry not into her death, but into the investigation of her death, which is an important kind of distinction here. And they're looking for corruption. So my first question to you is the big question. Could this actually lead to anything? Do you think this is actually going anywhere, or is this going to be another thing that's going to disappoint folks?
Well, let's acknowledge that it's going to be tough to get this one off the ground relative to a corruption case 15 years after the fact. Generally, with a cold case, the way they're solved, and this is a cold case at this point, the investigation into the investigators. Generally, what happens is that somebody gets arrested and says, hey, look, I know you got me on my third robbery. I'm going to go away for 10 years. Let's make a deal. I can give you a homicide. I know somebody who committed a murder. And then you're getting into a wheel and deal situation. And so ultimately, that's how you very often solve cold cases. The instances of solving cold cases from unearthing new information and actually having it stick. Generally, it is a murder case because you have the statute of limitations issue. But instances of solving a cold case that you can actually bring to a conviction are pretty rare for those reasons. And if they do happen, like I said, they generally happen the way I just described. So what you would need here is you got to go back 15 years. And you're going to have to really get into the timeline of what happened right after the event, whatever the event was. And you're going to have to talk to those people and see, frankly, if you can play some of them off of each other. You're going to have to get in there and say, well, you know, so-and-so told me A, you're telling me B. Those two things can't be accurate. 15 years later, some of those people might not even be with us anymore. Some of them are scattered around the world. Now, you have the feds, which is good. They have longer reach. You can reach out to other states. People are tired of Florida. You can get down there. You can get somebody to go take a look, knock on a guy's door, maybe try to get a statement. But ultimately, what you're really going to have to deal with, because the physical evidence that's in evidence, that is recorded, so to speak, in the paperwork and otherwise, has been poured over by like 3 or 4 different prosecutorial offices. So at this point, you're really going to have to talk to people. And you're going to have to try to get people to contradict each other and then play them off of each other. I really don't see another way to go about it.
I think you're absolutely right. And you make an important point too, that we're not, there's more steps here involved than you may, folks may be realizing, because let's say, miracle of miracles. And I agree with you. I think it's a long shot, and I hate to say that. And I know that disappoints a lot of people, but let's say the AUSA goes in there, does their whole investigation, and then says, you know what? Here's the steps that would have to take place. 1, we feel this wasn't investigated properly. 2, we feel it was a homicide. And then even when you get to that point, are you at the point where you can even make an arrest, right? Because even if it's declared a quote unquote homicide, that doesn't mean they're going out and putting handcuffs on anyone immediately, right?
No, especially when you consider that if there is some sort of a federal crime here that you're going to try to charge, right? Where you're going to say, okay, you know what, you guys covered up a murder, you're guilty of this, this, and this at the federal level, which is, you know, those crimes are not wonderfully amenable to federal charges. But assuming you can get there on maybe on some kind of a civil rights thing or what you would call like an integrity crime, a public integrity crime, relative to how the police or the prosecutors acted, you got to worry about statute of limitation issue. You're going to have to demonstrate that, well, we're not over the statute. The statute stopped, told is the term, because it was not discoverable until now. And that's going to be tough. Look, I come at these things from the prosecutorial side. But as you said, this show, you do both sides. And if I'm defending, let's say, a police supervisor or the district attorney's office, and I got the feds breathing down my guy's neck, and they're saying, look, we want to put him into the grand jury, we want to do this, we want to do that. I'm going at all this stuff. I'm going at the idea that, no, we're well past the statute of limitations. And the idea that it was only investigatable now doesn't hold water, because you've had 15 years. You've had various federal administrations, never mind administrations at the state level, who could have looked into this and did not. So it's a gummy thing. Marbled into it is the fact that there's the pending civil suit from Ellen's parents, which is where, everybody really sort of feels this one in their heart, because the poor family, now that the parents have lost their daughter. And, I'm just going to state it. In my opinion, I don't think they've received adequate justice. I don't think they got a fair play here. I do think that something was badly botched, but unfortunately, they just keep kicking the can downrange. And at this point, it's going to remain to be seen what they can actually get out of it. Maybe they can get a few answers, but like you say, I don't know that they're going to put cuffs on anyone.
Yeah. You make it another point too that I had not really explored, is that let's say they do put cuffs on someone, even after all of that.
Right.
Any defense attorney would have a field day with the back and forth. I mean, think about how they could call the medical examiner and say, well, didn't you first, categorize this as self-harm, and now you go back because you were influenced, and then you've got another medical examiner who independently says it's self. I mean, it's just it would be a monumentally difficult case for the prosecution, even if they felt like they had enough to make an arrest, to actually secure a conviction in that. And I know that's not entirely what the family is after, but if that is what people are thinking could come out of all of this. My next question, though, is, and I know that you're not on the inside with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Philadelphia. They're not exactly calling you, but what do you think happened? Why now are they submitting these subpoenas? Is there anything that you can imagine that would, after 15 years and after all of the public outrage, that they would now decide, hey, you know what, we are going to look at this?
So I would posit two possibilities here. Number one, the family has had the ability somehow or other to do a reach out to get somebody to listen to them. Whereas in the past, maybe nobody was listening to them. And, the Trump administration, we have a new administration. So maybe the administration, for whatever reason, or the AUSA down there, the U.S. attorney operating in that area, was willing to say, hey, I'll hear you out and see what happened here and bring what I can to bear. The other thing, though, is, and we can't overlook this, is political. Obviously, Philadelphia is a very blue area in a state that's purple trending red. And you have a primary, I wouldn't say he's a major Trump antagonist, because I don't think he punches it that way. But you have a real dyed-in-the-wool Soros prosecutor there in Krasner. And you also have Josh Shapiro, who had some exposure on this case, arguably. And, they may be trying to just pull it apart and see, look, what happened here? Because you know what it is, Josh, with this case, and the reason it hasn't gone away, the facts are just so egregious. I mean, stabbed 20 times from behind. Look, I don't mean to be graphic, but, working as a cop, every cop's got the story. I've seen a lot of suicides, the aftermaths of the suicides. And, you have to treat them as if they are suspicious until they're not. You got to call the ME, the detectives come, they got to, the ME has to pronounce, the medical examiner, has to pronounce, ultimately makes a ruling. And the idea that somebody stabbed herself, whatever it is, 10 times from behind, there's this stuff with the door that we can talk about. There is some other forensic aspects of it about how she was lying. The lividity in her body doesn't really track to the paperwork as to how the body was found. There are a number of things here that just, from Forensics 101, just don't really make a whole lot of sense. And they seem to be hanging their hats on the idea that she had some emotional issues, was going through a tough time, et cetera. Yeah, well, welcome to the club. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She's a young woman. She's on medication. She's not on medication. Who knows? But the bottom line is what happened here is so extremely rare that it really sets people off. And, you know, I got to say, me as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The newest doctor, this who I referenced earlier, Lindsay Simon, in arriving at her conclusion, said that she was suffering from anxiety at the time of her death. And to your point, so is 150 other million people in this country. I mean,
I got anxiety right now. I'm on the air live with you. You kidding?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really kind of dismissive to say that that would cause someone to take their own life with no suicide note, no, you know, this completely this is a horrible way of saying it, but untraditional way of taking their own life. I mean, it's like everything about it makes it sound so dismissive to say, well, you know, she had anxiety. Humankind, thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate you for your support. Lulu loves Radiohead. Thank you for the super sticker. That's very, very kind of you and appreciate your support. Shy Gal, thank you. Says, Paul, Josh should send you a CC blanket and hat on us.
Oh, yeah, the day that
got
happens.
some merch. I'll send you some merch.
Yeah, the day I get a free merch out of this guy.
Next time I'm in New York, I'll bring it to you. So I don't have to pay for
Well, you're not coming
shipping
this weekend because of the blizzard. We got that part. All right.
And Fala, damn it. Thank you so much for the gifted memberships. Appreciate you for that and all of your generosity tonight. Happily blessed. Just become a member, everybody. Welcome aboard. Happily blessed. Appreciate that. And the Southern CJB says this wasn't on you or Gisela's radar. However, the Kevin West trial was interesting. We'll have to look into that. Thank you for giving us a heads up on that one. And Eroy, back again. Thank you so much. Says, what's going on in Spencer case? Recusal motion highlights so much bias. It's crazy to me that she wasn't off of the case on day one. We will have to look into that one as well. Thank you, Eroy. All right. That case we will continue to monitor. Obviously, the feds are kind of being tight-lipped about it, not sharing much, just saying, right, you know, subpoenas have been issued. We'll track that one. And
I mean, the only thing, just to close the loop, the only thing I can think of is if they do get enough evidence that they can lean on somebody, they can reopen it as a murder investigation. And the feds are not going to do that because you're not going to have a federal crime here, federal crime of murder. It would be tough. You'd have to do the kind of Mangione thing, use a stalking case. It gets legally murky. But what you could do is generally, and I ain't looking to Pennsylvania law, but I'm sure it's the same. No statute of limitations on murder. You could force the current DA to reopen. So I just do want to leave that possibility. I don't want to just say like, absolutely, it's done and we got to accept it. We don't have to accept it because it does look wrong. And I think we do need answers, and certainly the parents do.
Yeah, and that's not a small point. They could just reclassify this as a homicide, and it may not go much farther than that, but at least that might give a little bit of comfort to their family, Josh and Sandy, who's been living with this for 15 years going, this isn't right, you know? Yeah. And that might be enough for them to kind of put one foot in front of the other for the next day. We will keep everybody updated. Let's move on, though, to the Tyler Robinson case, because something very interesting is happening in this one that you don't see all that often, and I actually applaud it. So, again, to catch everyone up, Tyler Robinson has been accused. He's charged with aggravated murder. He's looking at the death penalty. This is out of Utah for the killing of Charlie Kirk on September 10th of last year at Utah Valley University. His attorneys have not even entered a plea. They have not even set a prelim date. And we're several months into this whole thing. Their latest effort was that they filed this motion to recuse the entire state's attorney's office, saying that because one of the supervising attorneys had a daughter who was at the event but didn't even witness the murder and was 85 feet away, that means the whole entire office needs to go. Before they could even argue that, they then said that the attorney's office can't even argue this conflict issue, that they have to assign the AG. So they're throwing everything at this case that they possibly can. So Erica Kirk, and I want to get into that and your thoughts on that, but why we're bringing this up tonight is Erica Kirk files a motion, and it was 1 page long, and I'll let you guys take a look at it here. But it's basically a motion for an invocation of her speedy trial rights. And she cites an interesting law out of Utah called Utah Code Section 7738.7 that says, in part, in determining a date for any criminal trial, the court shall consider the interests of the victim of a crime to a speedy resolution of the charges under the same standards that govern a defendant's right to a speedy trial. And the victim of a crime has the right to a speedy disposition of the charges free from unwarranted delay caused by or at the behest of the defendant. You don't see this all that often where it's codified. It's a statute in Utah. What are your thoughts on this? Is this a good move by Erica Kirk?
I think it is. I think she's as frustrated as the rest of us are who have been watching these proceedings. Now, look, we all know the wheels of justice grind slow, but as I said on the air the other day, at this rate, the killer, and he's innocent until proven guilty, but the accused killer will die of old age before he ever sees the firing squad, because this judge really seems to be allowing. Now, look, I get it's a relatively new judge. It's a capital case, a lot of eyes on it. Apparently, Utah has quirks in its criminal procedure that I haven't seen before. I can't believe he's not indicted already, but apparently he doesn't have to get indicted in a speedy way. They can just keep pushing it down range, which is what they're doing. You'd never have this in New York, but okay, it's counterintuitive, but that's Utah law, fair enough. But the idea now that they're looking to gum it up further with what I think a lot of us find to be a very frivolous motion, the idea that a member of the prosecution team who's not in court, his son was at the event when it happened, did not see it happen, texted his father. To me, that does not put that person receiving, a prosecutor receiving that text, in a position any different from anybody else on earth who got the alert from the news. And in fact, at first, he didn't even say that it was Kirk who'd been shot. He said something like, I think there's been a shooting.
Right.
So, he probably couldn't see what occurred. He heard the shots. Yeah, there we go. So that being the case, I don't see the distinction that they are drawing. And then they did something that I think annoyed a lot of people and should have annoyed the judge. It was the one time I saw the judge spark up a little bit when the defense stated, well, you know what? We can't even argue this with the Utah County District Attorney's Office. We can't do this under the case law. You're going to have to get the state AG in here just to resolve this, however it goes. And that was essentially saying, Judge, let me make this decision for you. And then he started citing case law. He wanted a hearing on it. He was asking to get at the very least a hearing. The judge said he would take it under advisement. Then he starts citing case law. So essentially he turned it into a hearing right then. And I think a lot of us watching it were waiting for the judge. I mean, I'm sure in LA, certainly in New York and Chicago and other big city places, I think that some of these crusty judges who have been around for a while would have taken your head off for a stunt like that. But the judge is let's just use the term, very judicious. He's being very cautious. I find him professional, but he's being awfully sort of contemplative about everything. Yeah. And I think a lot of us are at the point where we're saying, get on with it.
Contemplative is the most diplomatic way of putting it. To me,
I may have to argue in front of him someday. I got to be careful.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm about to disqualify myself from ever arguing in front of him, because to me, he is showing almost like a decision paralysis. Like he's got these issues in front of him and he can't make up his mind until both sides thoroughly brief the issue, and even on the smallest of issues. And then even then he's got to go back and consider it. And even then he's got to wait till another date before he even rules on it. Let me thank, first of all, Debbie Harrow for the super sticker. Very kind and generous of you, Debbie. Appreciate that. I think a lot of, and to Ann Potter, thank you so much for supporting the mods with coffee. Appreciate that, Ann. I think, to your point, a crusty, more experienced judge not only would have cut the defense off when they brought up this idea of, hey, we need to have the AG in here to even argue this issue. A judge would have said, are you kidding me? You're too late. You don't sandbag in my court. Too late.
Right.
You wanted that brought up. You should have brought
they
that
hadn't
up.
gotten notice on it. That's right.
Right. No notice, no issue in front of me. But on top of that, a more experienced judge, I think, would have ended this entire argument about the conflict so long ago for all the reasons that you just pointed out. 85 feet away amongst 1,000 other people who happened to be there, didn't witness the event. Because here's my point. Even if this, and I believe it's the daughter of this supervising prosecutor, even if she had witnessed it, that's what I heard a report today. Even if she had seen it, that doesn't disqualify the entire prosecutor's office. Like you're saying that somehow because this family member of the prosecution team happened to have witnessed an event that we've all seen, right, that it is too emotionally charged for them to make smart decisions. And that is just so ridiculous to me. They are obviously well-founded in the law, well-founded in the arguments for the death penalty. And I think this is all just a delay tactic at this point. Listen, as a defense attorney, I applaud defense attorneys making arguments, right? Like that's their job. But to me, this should have been ended far quicker by the judge in this case.
He'd be doing them a favor because, at this point, the whole thing is feeling like it is getting sort of shambolic. The defense attorney seems to be running the room. And, as you say, even if the daughter had seen it, and if she'd been in the second row, well, we all have seen it. I mean, the entire country has seen the event, and how that necessarily prejudices somebody that's on the prosecution team who is, as we say, not even in the courtroom. Prejudices it how? In the sense that what? Further motivates him to bring an assiduous prosecution? That's his job. The only way you could argue that there is prejudice is if you were to say something like, allege that but for the daughter having seen it, we would not have gone forward with arresting Tyler Robinson. Obviously, that's not the case here. That's the only possibility of prejudice here. It's ridiculous. And then they really pushed the envelope because right when it looked like we were done, they had the second or third recess, and they come back in, and then he starts complaining about how the camera was situated again, and that he didn't like the way Tyler Robinson was shown on camera, which is something that keeps coming up because the judge won't make a decision as to the cameras, which, again, he pushed out like 3 months. How complicated could the case law in Utah be that you need that much time to decide how or if the cameras are going to be in the courtroom? You and I both know you can make that decision practically spontaneously. Yeah. So, you want to be deliberative? Okay, fair enough. Go look at the case law. Look what's happened in other capital cases. See what the appeals look like. That's what clerks are for. Give your clerk a week. You're telling, tell you what, I'll buy a drink on Friday night, but get me a motion by Monday morning. And then that's it. And it's over. You make your decision. You do it, as they say in New York. You could do it on the papers. And, you can get it out there, done, and no argument. That's my decision, and on to plan B. So it really does feel like this judge, I suspect the judge probably is feeling maybe a little bit of pressure to move it along. So I wouldn't be surprised from here it starts to move, because the latest hearing, the one we're talking about, I think there's no other way to categorize it.
Yeah, it was that hearing kind of pushed, I think, a lot of people over the edge that this judge might not entirely know what he's doing. I mean, I at first thought, hey, he's just a little bit quirky and he likes to do things by the book and he likes to kind of have things written out. And now I'm starting to view this as a judge who's just in over his head. Karen G, thank you so much for the super chat, says, could she have locked the door after the attacker left? Was there blood on the lock or the door? What about the depth of the stab to the back of the head? These are all questions dealing with Ellen Greenberg that a lot of people have been asking since, for the last 15 years. And yeah, there's arguments. You could go back and forth on this thing all day long. The point being, I don't think it should have been as easily dismissed as being self-harm as it was.
Well, let me speak to the door. The door issue. The problem with the door was that it wasn't destroyed. Like, even if she had locked the door, as you're positing, the boyfriend's apparently his statement to the police was that he broke the door in order to get in, and it didn't show signs of that you would have had if you had to kick the door in. Also, there was a super that worked in the building who ended up changing his testimony for reasons that are unclear. who at first said he had seen the whole thing in terms of the boyfriend trying to get in the door, and then ultimately backtracked on that. So it's, you're right. That is a salient aspect of this thing. But the fact that the door does seem not to be blown in, it's a city door. It's got a heavy lock on it and everything else. You would see the thing would have to be kicked off its hinges practically, and obviously that wasn't the case. So that doesn't track either.
No, it doesn't. I know that Eroy's alerting us here, and a lot of you have as well. We are aware that there is a verdict in the Uvalde case. So we have the live feed from Court TV. Paul, if you don't mind sticking around, if they are going to read the verdict, we'll go ahead and put it up here live so nobody has to go anywhere. But it's a great segue because that's the next case I wanted to talk to you about. And so we're going to be doing a little bit of mind reading here as to what these jurors may have, their verdict may be. They've been going at it for over 7 hours. So, not entirely lightning quick, but it seems like probably around the right amount of time. So this is the case this is surrounding the horrific, nightmarish. And Caitlin, if you want to even put the feed up while we're chatting so that we don't miss anything, if you're able to do it okay. And if you need to break in with sound, just let us know. It has become a modern day repeating nightmare that we continue to talk about these school shootings. But this one in particular is one that disturbed people to a foundational level like we haven't seen in quite a long time, because it involved 19 children. 19 children inside of a school lost their lives, along with 2 teachers. And one fact in this whole thing that keeps on coming back to my mind, at least, is that it took 77 minutes from the time that the shooter entered the school to the time that he was actually finally apprehended. 77 minutes. And that's, I think, why we're sitting here today and why this jury has been deliberating. And it's important to realize, too, that Officer Adrian Gonzales, in no way are they arguing he's responsible for their deaths, but they are arguing that he is guilty of child endangerment and abandonment. So in a sense, it is kind of connected to their deaths. And the theory from the prosecution is, Paul, that it's not that he did something that was criminal. It's that he didn't do something we hoped he would have done. Right. What are your thoughts on that, just as a general criminal theory? We don't see that all that often.
No, we don't. And it's very, very tough to criminalize. Look, every criminal charge has a mental aspect to it. That is your level of intent. They call it mens rea in the law because lawyers love Latin. Makes them sound smart, even if they're not. And then there is the active part. You did something. But as you say, in this case, getting those two things are quite difficult. You got to get in his head here where he didn't do something. And then the fact remains that he didn't take action when we would have expected him to. Now, the prosecution is quite aware of that. And so they did something pretty novel. The two charges are abandonment and endangerment, as you said. The abandonment charge is what's really novel. And I almost wouldn't be surprised if he gets acquitted on this, because the theory of the abandonment charge is that when the cops arrived at the school, they had constructive possession, responsibility for. They had assumed the custody of the kids. Now, that's a little murky for me, and I think what it hinges on goes to the second charge, which is the child endangerment, because the argument is that they kept other people, that is parents, family members who were rushing to the scene when they heard what was going on, kept them from going into the school while they didn't go into the school. So the argument is that the cops had constructive custody of the kids because they wouldn't let anybody else take custody of the kids as the shooting was going on during these 77 minutes. It's quite novel. And it's almost like if you buy the endangerment part, which is where they kept people from coming in to help rescue the kids, well, then maybe you do get the first charge, the abandonment, because is that custody, keeping other people, family members, parents away from their own kids? Well, then do you have custody? constructive custody? Do the teachers have custody of the kids? Does anybody have custody of the kids? There's going to be no case law on this in Texas.
No.
This is a very novel circumstance. So it'll be interesting to see the way they go. We should recognize that the charges don't carry a very heavy hit. One is 1 year, one's 2 years. I think the custody thing is a misdemeanor. So, but nonetheless, as we've talked about on the weekly wrap, it's one of those things where we're groping for an answer because the facts of the case are so horrific and incomprehensible. And like all justice, it's a groping in the dark, in the firmament, for some justice for something that's realistically unjustifiable.
Yeah. As you were speaking, you did such a great job of laying that out. As you were speaking, I'm almost wondering if it's best analogized to as if EMTs, paramedics had shown up to the scene of a drowning or something, or some sort of medical emergency. And instead of performing CPR or life-saving measures on the person, the child, let's say, they kept everyone back and said, let us handle this, and didn't allow anyone else to perform any life-saving measures. And in that case, you could make that argument that they had taken custody of that person and that prevented others from doing something that might have saved that child's life in that instance. That's a very, very interesting argument, but I agree with you. It might be a little too novel for jurors to wrap their heads around.
I could very well be. In the fact that they came back in essentially a day here tells me that chances are you're going to get at least one guilty verdict. If I had to guess, it's going to be on the endangerment. If you ask me, Paul, bet your pension, I think they're coming back guilty on both counts, if I had to guess. But as to why it took 7 hours as it did, I wouldn't be surprised if you hear from jurors later, we were wrestling with the abandonment charge. Because the idea then, because remember, what you have to posit then is not only that they had taken custody of these kids, even though according to the defense, they had never seen the kids. They heard some shots, but they didn't actually physically see the kids that they supposedly had custody of. But then you would have to argue that they also then abandoned them. And, that takes an action. Abandonment means, you did something in the normal context, the custodial context, in a matrimonial case, with child custody situations. Abandonment generally means I took the kid to the park, I left the kid there, I went and scored drugs. And so that's clear abandonment. You went and did something. In this case, as you pointed out at the top, they didn't do something.
Right.
And so you do get into a very almost metaphysical question. Juries generally don't like metaphysical constructs. They want facts and they want evidence. So if there's anything that's weak here, I think it's the abandonment, but that's the misdemeanor. The heavier charge is the felony, which is the endangerment. My understanding is it carries 2 years. Now, I don't know if they charged it for each kid. I don't think they did. My understanding is it's just 2 years. That's what the top charge, the top hit that Gonzales would be looking at. And look, I have been very hard on the cops in this case. Coming from law enforcement, but also, sometimes I got to put my attorney hat on. And I got to say, this was badly, badly blown. We all know that. What I do go back to in the police context is that I feel like the leadership is not being called to account.
Yeah.
The Uvalde leadership here really should be called on the carpet, because I can tell you, having been in a lot of tense situations where I'm not there, but I'm on the way, or I got to make the call and my cops are there. Thankfully, it was never a school shooting. Strangely, we haven't had that a lot in New York, thankfully. But you gotta, if you're not even at the scene and you hear they're shooting, you got to give the green light from off site. You got to get on the radio and say, my authority, take that door, go. Yeah. Because that protocol has to be worked out ahead of time. The cops got to know what to do. And if they're not going, when you get there, you better demand, why didn't you go in? And you're going in damn well now. So 77 minutes, unless you're coming from the other side of Texas, they should have got there. I don't know where the leadership was on this thing. Cops will generally do what they're told. All right, that's the case. That goes for me as well. They say to be a good leader, you got to be a good follower sometimes. And that's the truth in any paramilitary organization. You have a pyramidal structure. You tell the cop, as long as it's something legal, even if it's dangerous, if it's legal and that cop understands it's part of his or her job, they're going to go do it. So that tells me in this circumstance, nobody went in for 77 minutes. Where were the
Please be seated,
bosses?
Gordon.
I keep bumping up that.
Members of the jury have received.
So he's in court now. We'll
information
listen
to
in on
have
the
a
verdict
Could I
here.
have the presiding juror stand momentarily? Is that verdict unanimous, sir?
Yes.
As to each of the 29 counts?
Yes.
Could you hand it to the bailiff for me, and you may be seated? Could I have defendant and counsel please rise? All right, the cause number 25 FC 0001U, the state of Texas versus Adrian Gonzales. In each of the 29 counts, we, the jury, find the defendant, Adrian Gonzales, not guilty.
Wow.
You see it? All right, members of the jury, I want to thank each and every one of you for your close attention and your patience and being with us timely throughout this trial. I know it was not easy for you. I know everybody was drafted. Nobody volunteered. It was a long endeavor, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I'm going to ask you one more time to go with the bailiff to the jury room, and we'll release you from back there. But thank each and every one of you, and will everyone rise for the jury to be excused.
Wow. 29 counts across the board, acquitted there. Are you surprised?
I am. As I said, I guess I just lost my pension. I'm not surprised. So I guess they did charge it individually. You know, I'm glad I brought that up because I hadn't heard that. But I guess they did charge on each of the kids to have that many counts. And, you know, that might have played into it, Josh, because the jury might have gone back, considered the kind of stuff that you and I just talked about the fact that they were charging the fact that they didn't do something and that they had supposed custody of the kids. And like I said, it gets into a very sort of murky metaphysical area about who's in charge of these kids at a particular point. And then when they looked and they said, well, 29 counts, and if each of those counts is going to carry one on the first charge 1 year and on the second 2, I don't know how it was configured. My point is they might have done the math and said, you know what, this guy's going to die in jail. Yeah. And we can't send this guy to die in jail under this theory of the application of those statutes. And so I think at the end of the day, it was just a little bit too novel and esoteric for a jury. And you know what? I got to say, you know, hats off to the jury. Yeah. Because this is one where it would have been very easy to say, hang these cops, they blew it, those kids are dead, somebody's got to pay. They didn't do that. And as you and I have talked about, you know, jurors, you deal with juries in the court system, very often it reaffirms your faith because they take it so seriously. Some of them get way out on a limb. They've seen too many episodes of Law and Order. But, you know, when you see the seriousness that people take this responsibility, it restores your faith in our system.
100%. And you make an excellent point because this is such, everyone's heart broke when this news came out. The entire nation's heart broke. And the jurors have been sitting through several days of watching the family members. There they are in court. These people are torn to bits. They are zombies, having to get up every single morning of every single day with the loss of their child in this horrific of a manner. And this jury realizing all of that, to your point, to come back with this verdict because they felt like they were following the law is I'm sure extremely difficult for them. I mean, they even talked about there were points where the jury was crying at certain aspects of this trial. So this was not an easy thing for them to do, I imagine, return with this verdict.
Very brave.
Very brave. Very brave. And I applaud their efforts. You know, I'm sure that they, 7 hours for them to talk about this is a significant amount of time when it really did come down to kind of one question here of whether or not this person should be held responsible for failing to act when we wish that he would have. Right. I'm still glad that we are talking tonight, because I was really interested to hear your thoughts on the some of the law enforcement aspects on this, because one of the witnesses, and I know this is kind of, we're playing Monday morning quarterback, but one of the witnesses called, there was only 2 witnesses called by the defense. And one of those was a retired SWAT officer named Willie Cantu, who testified as an expert essentially to police tactics. And he talked about something, and I'm curious if you've ever heard this term before. He talked about inattentive blindness. And he was saying that there was this kind of fog of war almost that took place, and that it was in the heat of the moment, with the shots being fired, with the chaos of the radio, that he just perhaps didn't act in a way that was prescribed by protocols, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he was criminally responsible for that. Have you ever heard that term? Do you have any insights into what's being discussed there?
No, I've never heard that. And that feels to me like the kind of thing that some psychologist conjured someplace to give the defense bar, something to argue and experts to hire. And I'm not casting any aspersions on that SWAT member. I'm sure he had a storied career. That's brave work. I didn't do it. Those are as they say, those are the cops that the cops call. So, more power to them. But I'm not sure I'm buying into that. Look, I did feel in seeing some of the video that came out at the time, I remember thinking that there was an element of piling on. I do remember there was video they showed at one point, a couple of cops, 2 or 3 of them in a hallway, very clearly waiting for there was no sound of gunshots. They didn't seem to know entirely what was going on. The scene was very shambolic. And they were waiting around for their orders to see what they were going to do. And at one point, one of the cops very absentmindedly goes over, and there was a antiseptic dispenser on the wall, like an alcohol dispenser.
Oh my God, I remember this.
Remember that?
Yes.
And he just sort of absentmindedly does it. Everybody's like, what a monster. He's thinking about, COVID hygiene at this point. And like very clearly, they were just waiting around for their orders. He wasn't really thinking. Now, to me, that's inattentive blindness, right? That's just his, subconscious mind. We all had it drilled into us that you want to use those things as much as possible, try to stop the spread of COVID. He's thinking about something else. He just inattentively does it. And all of a sudden that made him a monster. That I didn't like. And I felt like that was a bridge too far here. I go back to, look, if he had inattentive blindness, then where was the rest of the department? Because that means they all had this one moment of this one day of inattentive blindness. And I got to go back and look. I also don't like the Monday morning quarterback, because you never know how anybody is going to respond in a high pressured situation, in a shooting, in anything. You can talk a big game, but until it's you that is being shot at or has a car coming at you, I'll be honest with you. I've had things that I look back on and say, the hell was I thinking running into that?
Yeah.
I should have stayed where I was and waited for backup, But, when you're young, you think you're going to live forever and everything else. You do crazy things as a cop or, in any circumstance. People think that they're a better swimmer than they are. They jump in the lake and then they almost drown. That's what youth is. So, I hesitate to Monday morning quarterback. But that said, this was a departmental-wide failure. And that's, I got to go back to it, man. That's the bosses. And it doesn't mean they should be prosecuted. And I'm sure that the state did some sort of a hot wash on it, put out a report about the failures. But to me, maybe the cops got to take a hit here. Yeah, I get it. But the leadership there is really where I think a lot of culpability lies. And I would like to know what orders were given in those 77 minutes, how they were conveyed, who went to the scene to control the situation, what the communications were like. A lot of the stuff that we heard about Butler when President Trump got shot. Why was it such a mess? That's the kind of stuff that you got to look at. And very often it just comes down to the bosses.
I've got 2 questions to dovetail off of what you just said. One, do you now think that with this across the board acquittal, does that foreclose the idea of them going after any supervisors? Or is there more of an argument to be made that, hey, they're the guys in charge and they hold more responsibility in this whole thing? And then my other thinking, though, is that because of the way you just described, like it's so chaotic and yeah, maybe you rush in there because you're young and stupid. Well, let's say some officer had said, to hell with this. Right. Who's with me? You, and you. Let's go. Saddle up. We're running inside. We're going to stop this. And they all get gunned down, right? Because they're not following orders and they're not waiting on protocols or whatever else. Then we might be having a trial about that, about those officers losing their lives, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. And actually, I should have made that point. So let me deal with those two in turn. First of all, you'd have to really make a distinction between what the bosses did that day, or the boss of Uvalde is not that large a police department, and the actual chief might have been responding. So you'd have to really make a distinction between orders that person gave and then the troops on the ground. And to get again, a child endangerment criminal charge, you'd really have to have some glaring affirmative fact where you had him saying, nobody goes in, we're going to wait, let's just wait this one out, or something like that. And I don't think any police supervisor said something like that. I think this was likely far less an instance of cowardice, which is, I know how it's often been characterized. I think it was more an instance of mismanagement, confusion, and ineptitude, frankly. Very tough to criminalize that. I think that likely where this has to reside is in the civil courts. I think that the lawsuits, I'm sure, were flying. I don't know if any of them are still extant. A criminal conviction would have nailed those down, but you don't need a criminal conviction. I'm sure the civil process is well underway. Now, as far as breaking protocol or ignoring orders and going in, yeah, that's a really good point, because I'm going to tell you, in the same way that I say cops will follow orders, part of those orders are the protocols. And if they're being told, stand down, or they're not getting orders and they're waiting, what they're thinking is, if I go in now, I have disobeyed orders, or at least not followed explicit orders. And God forbid, I come in, I open a door, there's the perp with a kid, and he starts shooting kids because I'm there. Right. Or you got a hostage barricaded, you can't get in a door, and he says, I hear you guys coming in, I'm going to start taking out one kid every 15 minutes or something like that.
So such a great point.
You're thinking that. You are thinking that. And I got to go back again to the bosses. At that point, the boss has to make some kind of a determination. And in 77 minutes, you have enough time, 15, 20 minutes, you get there, you assess the situation, you're still hearing gunshots. Now you got nothing to lose. He's still shooting, get in there. But if you don't hear gunshots, to your point, you're thinking, man, if I do something now to try to be the hero and I exacerbate this, I, God forbid, escalate this, it's going to really be worse. And you're right. That is going through their heads at the time. And you could have a very different trial just concluding if that had happened.
Yeah. I think end of the day, and this is probably what the jurors were thinking, is the end of the day, this was such a horrible situation that everybody was perhaps trying to do their best to handle it under the circumstances. And to hold one guy responsible is just not something they're comfortable doing. For everybody who's joining us, we've just heard that there was a verdict. It was an acquittal across the board of 29 counts in the case of Texas versus Adrian Gonzales. This is the police officer, one of the police officers who responded to the Uvalde shooting at Robb Elementary that took the lives of 19 children and 2 teachers. Paul, you are so fantastic. Let me thank Eroy really quickly. Says, we don't send doctors into solo surgery without years of practice. Why is 1 8-hour training sufficient for police? Leadership needs to make more training a requirement. That's an excellent point as well, that, a lot of these guys is, and I'm sure out of this case, they got much more training, but still nothing is going to properly train you for the actually living the moment of the chaos of what's taking place. Paul, you're the best. I appreciate you so much. I want to tell some people about some of the stuff that you're up to. First of all, tell us about your Twitter account. You've got a bunch of people following you there, and you're very active on it. We have a link up here for everyone, Paul D. Mauro, and the Ops Desk. Tell us about the Ops Desk.
Yeah, that's my blog, and I do a podcast. I don't do something live like this, but actually seeing you do this, I think I'm going to try, because it looks like a lot of fun. You get to talk to the people. I don't get that kind of feedback. Neither do I get it at Fox. But opsdesk.org is the website, and I got a Substack. Like you said, I put this stuff up on X. I'm starting to play around with YouTube. I got a Facebook account with a lot of followers. So it's not just me. I got a cop buddy and another lawyer that writes with me as well. You're always welcome. And yeah, it's just security and legal stuff. One thing I do that I think is a little counterintuitive for people, I do a lot of foreign policy stuff because I spent 15 years doing counterterrorism. So I got immersed in that world a little bit, but foreign policy in the sense of security issues. So if you're interested in that stuff, come check it out. Drop a note if you'd like to. We always like to hear. And yeah, maybe I'll get to do one of these and you'll return the favor and come on for me, huh?
I would happily do that. I look forward to it.
Yeah, I'll send you some merch.
Not to mention that you've got this brand new hit show on Fox Nation called The Weekly Rap Sheet, a new episode coming out tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, you should see the two characters I'm on with too, boy. Wow, where'd they find these two?
They're just dragging you down.
God, help us. We need better security. They got in the building somehow. Obviously, yes, the weekly rap sheet's a lot of fun. We do it Fridays. We go over cases, much like we just did, but the experienced voices of Donna Rotuno, Chicago. We got the whole country covered. Donna's former homicide prosecutor from Chicago. She does defense work. You got LA prosecutor now doing defense work. I'm there, I'm a tag along. But that said, we do all these hot cases and we read emails that we get from the public and stuff. It's pretty interactive. It's on Fox Nation, the Fox streaming network, which is doing really well. And yeah, come by. We'd love to see you.
And we're going to be taking questions too. We've got questions. We're going to be talking about the Greenberg case. We're going to be talking about Charlie Kirk. We're going to be talking about all these cases that we discussed tonight, Uvalde. So if you have questions, we really appreciate if you guys would send them in. Email us at theweeklyrapsheet@fox.com and we answer them on the air.
We do as well as we can, but that's pretty good.
You're the best, my friend. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'll see you soon.
Anytime, Josh. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Love that guy. He's so fantastic. Please check out his Substack and that Ops. I want to give you the proper name for it again, the Ops Desk, because Paul, on top of being great on camera, he's a wonderful writer and has some really great takes on a lot of these cases that we follow. So please check it out and just send him a thank you for being on here with us. All right, guys, don't go anywhere. Don't touch the remote. Don't touch your keyboard. We have some announcements that I want you to don't leave, says therapist. A lot of announcements I want to catch you up on, things taking place this week. I'm looking at them right now and we got a lot coming up. And I'm going to answer some of the questions that we missed. Julia, the nurse, thank you for the super chat, says there were 2 paramedics charged and convicted in Toronto of non-treatment of a patient in a similar situation. There you go. I think that's a remarkably good kind of analogy that, hey, it's one thing if you are maybe not doing your job all that great, and it's another thing for preventing others from trying to do your job. And I think that might have, been one of the questions that the jurors were considering tonight. I gotta say, I don't know how much I'm shocked by the verdict, but I do know I feel bad that these family members are not feeling like they've gotten any further justice or comfort. And I don't know if this would have brought that to them, but I do know that they're not. The wounds are continuing to be open for them, and the heartbreak is continuing to be just as palpable today as it was when this horrific event took place. So I'm sad. My heart goes out to them. All right. Like I said, Best Nancy, thank you so much for gifting the membership. Appreciate you. Did I miss anybody? Karen G 7201. Thank you for the super chat. Says self-inflicted theory was instrument close to her. And I guess what you mean by instrument is the knife. Yeah, the knife was right there. Apparently grabbed from the kitchen counter. Kay Davidson, thank you, has been a member for 2 months. Golf clap for Kay Davidson. Says, love the CC family, health and happiness to all. Well, right back at you. Appreciate you. Joy W. Can has been a member 1 year. Happy birthday, Joy W. Can. Haha. Woohoo. 1 whole year, Heart the CC, and crew. Happy birthday. We should have some sort of birthday graphic or something when somebody hits 12 months. Appreciate you, Joy W. Can, for all your support. And Christy says, love to see Paul and Josh on Fox News. Well, appreciate you, Christy. I'm a big fan of Paul. He's becoming a bit of a mentor of mine. E. Roy, thank you for the super chat, says, can we get a I watch live verdicts with the Courtroom Confidential crew shirt? That's a great idea. Kaylin, add that to the list. We'll work on that one as well. All right. Let me get to these announcements, but first I have one quick word from our sponsor. Here's something worth thinking about as the new year gets underway. A lot of people reset their passwords, clean out their inboxes, and assume that means they're starting the year fresh. But the truth is, if your information was already exposed last year, the risk doesn't reset on January 1st. Data brokers and hackers are still out there, and your personal information may already be circulating without you even knowing it. That's why starting the year protected matters. That's why I use this episode's sponsor, Aura. Aura provides full digital security, so you're covered even when breaches and scams happen. You get dark web alerts, bank fraud monitoring, a VPN, antivirus, and password manager, and up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all in one app. Try Aura free for 14 days at aura.com/courtroomconfidential. You'll see exactly where your info's being sold and get it removed. It's free to try, it protects you, and it helps support the show. All right. Let me tell you about a website. It's called thecourtroomconfidential.com. It is your one-stop source for the big 3 M's. First of all, messages. We answer your questions live every Sunday on a show that we call Sunday Fun Day. And the way that you can leave us a message to ask one of those questions is to go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on Leave Us a Message. Membership. A lot of you joined, a lot of gift memberships tonight. I hope that you're all enjoying your Courtroom Confidential memberships, and we would love to have you, especially because we're going to be having our monthly members only live this Friday. That's 2 days from now for everybody who's a member in the classified and above. So please join up now by going to thecourtroomconfidential.com and clicking on Become a Member. And then finally, merch. Don't worry, I'm sending Paul some. I'm going to bring him some. I don't care what he says. He's getting a beanie at least to keep him warm. And if you would like to check out the merch that we have, go to the shop at thecourtroomconfidential.com. We've got mugs, we've got t-shirts, we've got sweatshirts in case you're a little chilly wherever you're at. We've got pajama pants, we've got quarter zips, we've got tumblers. We've got you covered is what we've got. So please check everything out at thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on the shop. Also, what did you miss on Monday? Well, we had our true crime docket, and we had as our special guest, Anjanette Levy. We talked about the latest in the Tepe murders with Michael McKee, and we talked a little bit about Tyler Robinson as well. Very popular show. A lot of you enjoyed it, so please check it out. It's up on the channel right now. And then stay tuned. This week, here's all the things that we got going on. First of all, the Brendan Banfield trial is still continuing. That is up on our sister channel, Courtroom Confidential Live Trials. So it is starting again tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern, day 6. It's a fascinating trial. Are we going into closings? Are we there already? No, not yet. So soon it will be happening. It's been moving along at a very quick clip. Check that out at Courtroom Confidential Live Trials. Thursday, which is also tomorrow. Like I said, check out the weekly rap sheet with myself and Paul, who you all got to meet tonight, along with Donna Rotuno. And we're going to be talking about a lot of these same cases, but it's great to hear their insights and thoughts on all of these things. And we would love to, you got to get in your questions tonight, though, hear from you. So email us at theweeklyrapsheet@fox.com. On Friday, we are going to do our weekly roundup here on Courtroom Confidential, live at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, talking about Tyler Robinson, and Aaron Spencer, and the Uvalde verdict that we just saw tonight, and Brandon Benfield. Everything taking place. Very busy week. So please check that out live at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And then if you are a member, classified or above, stick around, because right at 3 p.m. we're doing our members only live. And my understanding is that we've got a lot of funny / perhaps embarrassing, perhaps cute photos to share from you. We're doing that 2016 challenge. So please tune in for that. Plus, I think we're going to be doing some birthday, 3-year-old birthday party photos. Maybe is that included as well? The mermaid bubblegum birthday is going to be part of the show as well. Plus some, other more serious things I'm sure we'll be chatting about as well. That's this Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And then catch your breath. We're doing Sunday Fun Day. Back at our normal, or no, are we doing it at 8 a.m.? 8 a.m. So we're doing it a little bit earlier because we know there's some football taking place that day. 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. East, or 11 a.m. Eastern. And we've already got some great questions from you guys. We're going to be talking about Nick Reiner and Michael McKee and Ashley Buzzard, all of the cases that are in the news. Please join us this Sunday. It's going to be a really great show. And then we're giving you a big heads up for something taking place in May, and that is CrimeCon. We're going all in. We've been invited. We've booked our rooms. We're booking our airfare. We're finding childcare. We're going to be there. CrimeCon this May 29th through 31st in Vegas, baby. It's going to be fun. Kaylin is super juiced. She's what is your percentage of juiced though, Kaylin? What is how percentage wise or juiced are you for CrimeCon? I don't know how to do that on the chat, but I would say I'm 100% juiced for CrimeCon. Kaylin's 55% juiced. That's not very juiced. That's like preponderance of the evidence juiced for CrimeCon. We got to get those numbers up, Kaylin. Afton's even less. That's not even a passing grade, Afton. 47% juiced. I know why you're not that fully juiced, because you have not gotten your 10% discount code. Well, now we got it for you. If you would like any more reason to join us at CrimeCon this May, CrimeCon gave us a discount code. So if you enter the word courtroom, all caps, all one word, at checkout, you'll get 10% off, which is helpful. So we would love to see as many of you there as we possibly can. There you go. Josh Ritter is 100% juiced. I told you. That's how I run. That's just my baseline is 100% juice. So please join us. Beth, thank you so much for the super chat. Says, love this channel and chat because I feel the love. We feel it right back at you. All right. Let me thank some of our new members. To Emily Call 9192, Kim Heck 72, Vicky Ross 5293, Jess Vickery, Glass Onion, 13 Dogs Angels Moons, Misters Cincy John, Scout Inquirer, Laura Skillen, Cynthian, Hannah Bell 9615, Kai Granny X10, Lee in Maine, Debbie Godfrey, and Jesse Capters. That's pretty good. When I don't have like a really long list, I feel like I can get through it without losing control of my own lips. Thank you guys so much for being here, joining us on a Wednesday. I'm so glad that we were able to bring you that breaking news on the Uvalde verdict, and that you were all here with us to watch that. I want to give a very special shout out and thank you to Paul Mauro for being here. I really loved chatting with him. Send him some love if you get a chance on his Twitter or other areas he exists. Very, very special thank you to our mods, Afton, Shigao, Kathy, and therapists the best in the business. Kaylin, you're fantastic. How you pull all this together still amazes me. And Tiffany, you just happen to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you so much, guys. We will see you all on Friday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.